on right now, including some technical stuff going on from with the tech team. So with that, I will turn it over to Olivia. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. All right, folks. So we have two things I want to go over with you today. I'm going to share my screen here. We wanted to get up some poll questions first. So we talked a little bit about intake last week when we met. And whenever a customer completes an application, whenever they complete that application, they're going to get a page that provides them with the next step. If they're completing that application on their own, they could be doing it with a career planner, but if they're doing it on their own, they're going to get a page that prompts them with the next steps to move forward in the process. And that next step at this point is to meet with the career planner. They need to start going through eligibility certification. As part of this message that we provide them, we are going to give them a packet of information to get organized and ready for their appointment, to make sure they know the kinds of documentation to bring, let them know about some activities that they can do ahead of the time to streamline their time with the career planner, such as completing the skills and interest survey or completing the skills and work history assessment. All of that would pass through into IWDS for the career planners to be able to see for after eligibility certification when they move into more of those assessments. And then we're going to give them information on how to meet with that career planner. And we want to talk about two different kind of options here. We are considering potentially in a later phase to have some kind of scheduling tool, but not sure that's going to be a MVP July 1 out of the gate feature. And so the other options, if we don't have a scheduling tool in place by July 1, is to either prompt them to call their local WorkNet center and schedule an appointment. And we would give them a tool where they can find the WorkNet center that is closest to them to get served, whether that's closest to where they work or closest to their home, or maybe, however they need to do that will allow them to kind of manipulate that data based off of passing through the address information we have. They can tweak it a little bit. We'll give them a map and they can pick that local WorkNet center. And then at this point too, we will know programs they're eligible for or potentially eligible for. So we can hone those in a little closer. So like if they're a youth, we can be showing them the offices that serve youth in their area that can do the eligibility certification, and give them that contact information to call the local office to schedule that appointment. Our other option is we can let them have a space for them to click to get scheduled with a local office. And by clicking it, they would get a message that the local office will be in contact with them within X number of days to schedule that appointment. And we would pass that through to the appropriate office based on the information we have on the customer's location and the program tracks that would be able to serve the customer for the programs they're eligible for. And we would use a tiered approach to make sure that that is getting through to the right local office and pass it up as needed if that customer is not getting in contact with to the ALWIA. In both options, we're going to have visuals, and we'll talk about that next. But we have a couple of poll questions. And the first one is to determine, Kelly, if you want to go ahead and get that first poll question put up. The first one is to determine if you would rather the customer be prompted to call the local office or the customer submit a request for the local office to call them to get that appointment scheduled. Or maybe you don't have a preference, you don't care either way. There's an option for that as well. If you guys can go ahead and vote on poll question number 1.
Do you want us to answer all 3 questions?
Nope, just the first one. I'm sorry that all 3 popped up. We'll talk about the other 2 before we answer them. So just
Okay.
answer question number 1.
And then just submit. Okay.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for asking, Lisa, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I wasn't sure what you want for number 2, but I guess we'll talk about that one later. Thank you. Thanks for confirming.
Yeah. Looks like about 57 people have voted. I'm going to give just another few moments to get votes in. So got a handful of people. If you can go ahead and just vote on number 1 and then click submit. We'll talk about the other 2 questions. I'm going to give 15 more seconds. So if you haven't voted, get that vote in, and then we're going to start talking about the other question. Now that we kind of have a preference of the direction folks are preferring to go. Okay. So as part of having the features in the system to kind of support the facilitation of getting those customers scheduled after they have completed their application and being sure we're like effectively supporting them and helping them to move forward, we want to talk a little bit about visuals that you guys think would be helpful to facilitate that kind of work. And so we have dashboards that I think several of you are very familiar with. We have them in iPads. We also use them in the DCO special projects that I'm sure several of you have participated in, where we can elevate customers who are in various processes throughout the program to have the ability for you guys to easily see, like, here are all the customers currently in the pre-screening process. Like they have started it, but they haven't completed. Here are the customers who have completed pre-screening, but haven't started an application. And then we can also create sub rows under those for customers who are in the process of an application but haven't completed, and more than 30 days have passed since they started, or 60 days have passed since they started. This kind of information helps you guys to find potential customers you can reach out to who may have started the process but aren't all the way through, and it's an outreach opportunity. And then we also can continue to move that forward. So customers who have started application, customers who have completed application, and then sub rows under there to tier out time periods of how long it's been completed. So you know which to escalate more than others. Like maybe somebody literally completed 5 minutes ago versus somebody who completed and 5 days have passed. So your staff can easily target those that are falling over the defined time period versus those who might have just completed within the last couple of minutes. And then we can, when they complete the applications and have those cues to, like, they want to schedule an appointment with a career planner, everybody at this point will schedule an appointment with a career planner, even if we determined that they didn't look like they met eligibility with the application. We still are going to encourage that they connect with their local office because they could have answered things incorrectly, and we don't want them to fall through the cracks if they misunderstood one of the application questions. So this gives them a space to do that. So we can break those out too into like groups of, these are the ones the system determined as potentially eligible versus these are the ones the system was not able to determine eligibility, to help you guys get those folks scheduled with the right staff as well, if that might be a different staff member. Let me take a look real quick. I see I have some questions coming in. Perfect. So some of you will call them, some of you will email them to schedule those. Rory, I'm going to read through your comment here, but Kelly, can we open this chat or this poll back up for people to re-vote on question 3?
And you kind of answered some of that. Sorry, like as I was typing, it's like my question is probably like half and half. Like half of it you did explain something that would kind of answer it, and then the other half is probably getting ahead of ourselves a few screens. So it's might be a little of both there. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we'll dig into that question.
It was just one of those, like when the question like like popped into my head, it's like, oh, I want to just kind of at least type it out before I forget to ask, and down in the next few minutes or down the road.
It looks like Kelly's not on.
I'm operating the poll over here. Just sent you a message.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and try ending the poll and seeing if you could relaunch it so they can ask the third question. Here, relaunch poll. Yes. Perfect. Okay. I captured the data from the question 1 before it was ended. I grabbed all that. So you guys can go ahead and re-answer. Just answer question 3 at this point. Based on the results we got, over 2/3 of people were looking at wanting to go towards the put in a queue and have the career planner reach out for an appointment. We still will provide the customer with like a way to find the local office closest to them. So if they do want to reach out, if they have questions or need other assistance, we will make that available to them, but we're not going to prompt them to call and schedule for this. We'll prompt them that somebody will call them. But one of the things we want to do throughout the system is throughout several spaces is always give them like a button to find local in-person help where they can connect with their local office if they need any kind of assistance. So go ahead and answer poll question 3. If you have other things that you think you would want to see or have visualization on or have called out as it relates to being able to effectively support customers as you're working to schedule them after they've completed an application, definitely type those things in the chat so that we can have visibility of that as we start looking through this process. Okay, let's see, we got not have very much engagement. If I can have make sure everybody's participating in this. I only have 43 folks on the call have provided an answer. So I do want to give another 45 seconds to make sure folks are getting us some data for question 3 in the poll.
So this is in this is in regards to like what we would with the LWIA, WorkNet Center staff would see in the new system? This is, are you at, I think I understand the question. Sorry. And I'm probably overthinking it. I apologize. Is this, are you asking like what, with those notifications where you can like, prioritize or sort or the customer names by their status, like how long an application has been completed and waiting for contact, that kind of thing. So are you saying which of these types of categories of like these would be like status categories, right? Like the customer is in the pre-screening process, the customers, their status is that they're in process of application with sub rows. So is that what you're asking? Like which of these would be the most helpful for us to see when we get notifications or when we or staff logs into IWDS to get like a dashboard, like an update of Inquirent's customer status?
Yes, and so really any kind of visualizations, whether it's like a dashboard with some of the rows that we laid out, or you're wanting specific kind of notifications or specific data in a table on that customer. Like we would want to see for each customer how many days have passed since complete of application. We'd want to easily be able to click a count of all customers with a completed application in the queue to get scheduled, and then a sub row for how many have lapsed since 5 days from application completed. All those things. We're wanting a full picture of the different kinds of tools you guys think would help support effectively identifying those customers and being able to conduct the outreach to get them in to move forward with eligibility certification.
No, thanks for explaining. I'm just torn because I'm like, well, these would all probably be helpful. You probably kind of want to know who everybody is. So I'm sorry, I'm just indecisive. But I will try to make a decision to close the poll here. I don't want to be the last holdout.
That's perfectly fine. And we're not necessarily saying we'll build absolutely every single thing by July 1, but we can have an idea of all the various needs or items that we've identified would be helpful, and then can look at prioritizing which of those, and some of them might be similar. We might be able to two birds, one stone kind of thing by taking something and making it have additional columns to provide a higher level of information. So this just kind of helps us capture from you guys' local perspective how the system could kind of help facilitate that and elevate that to a way you guys can really use that information to get those scheduled and move through the eligibility certification. Lisa, I see you have your hand raised, and then I also see I have two hand raised. So Paul, will come to you after Lisa.
Maybe I answered it strangely, but what we've experienced in the past is particularly during COVID when a large number of individuals were going into Career Connect customers to be able to fill out certain, screens and being able to like kind of facilitate that process more in a virtual setting. We found so many incredible amount of errors coming from the customers that it got to be so overwhelming and time consuming to get things corrected, and that we just stopped them from doing it. And we ourselves were putting it in. So that's kind of why I said in the poll at the front end where they just did the pre-screening so that the application part didn't have a significant amount of errors that we needed to work through with the customer for correction. And I don't know, maybe I'm answering that incorrectly in what you were specifically asking. But I would want my staff to be notified by, that a customer is ready after pre-screen for contact. Is that what the question really was? Or am I misunderstanding what you were asking?
No, we did discuss kind of what you were talking about from the Career Connect perspective when you guys had that opened up.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, we will always allow the customer if they want to even move forward with the application, but we are we have reduced the application significantly from what it used to be. And we have really worked on rewording those questions to make them customer centered and easier to understand from a customer to help minimize incorrect data because they're not fully understanding what's being asked. But one of the things we have is the customer can move forward with the application, but that doesn't mean you guys can't start doing outreach and getting them in sooner. And so that's why we have a couple rows here on like having awareness of people who have completed pre-screening, because that might be where you guys want to start making your outreach attempts, is to after pre-screening to have them come in and meet with you. But we do want to continue to give them the option to move forward with the application. So that they're not necessarily having to stop everything and wait for an appointment to go to the next step if they're ready to start answering questions and providing data.
Okay, I just, sometimes it wasn't a matter of them misunderstanding. Sometimes it was a matter of them not wanting to share. Because they thought
Right.
maybe that might be something that might stop them or prohibit them from being able to participate or move forward. And, we started to see some just inaccurate information simply because they didn't want to share all of that extra stuff, if that makes sense. I mean, sure,
Yes.
there was misunderstanding about the questions, but there was still that other not really wanting to provide it either.
Yeah, one of the things we've tried to do regarding that is in sections where we start going into some of the information where we're asking kind of intrusive questions where people are doing exactly what you're saying. They think this might prevent them from being able to participate, is we have some informational text there that we're collecting this information and we need to know it all because it can help them be eligible for the program. We're really trying to not use words like eligible and stuff, but we've been working with a couple of folks from state and local and marketing on how we can word things to make individuals feel comfortable providing this information while knowing it's not going to impact their ability to participate. I'm sure we will still run into that. You can say things 100 times and some people will still feel nervous or won't read things, but we are working on ways to mitigate that. And I will bring this up to the state team, Lisa, just the concerns on this. And if there's anything else you think we could do to help curb that or the errors or inconsistencies we get in the application, we definitely want to, have a more detailed conversation on that so that we can work to kind of streamline this for our customers while still maintaining data accuracy.
Well, one of the things that we did when it came to obtaining information on people with disabilities, because our agency and AJC is an employment network for Ticket to Work.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we did was this whole knowledge is power type of mantra, and it wasn't so much about eligibility with the way that we phrased it. It was more about sharing this additional information will help more resources be made available to you.
Okay.
So it was more about what else can be offered kind of thing,
Yeah.
It's just a different way of saying eligible. It's more about what we're going to
Right.
give to them as opposed to what they're going to give to us. Knowledge is power kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've really been trying to shift the mindset of
Yeah.
this to be more focused on that, and moving away from saying, what do you need help with, and making it that they need something from us, but how can we help you, or also really trying to get away from the word help when we can.
Well, the additional resources are available for,
Mhm.
by sharing that information, there may be other possible resources that can be made available to you
Right.
because of that information. It's kind of how we phrased it in the past.
Perfect. And I just wrote that down too. and we'll look into that. I know we are connecting with some of, we've reached out to a couple locals for engagement, and one of the resources we're going to work with is one of Chicago's marketing folks who I think was involved in what you're talking about, the knowledge is power, and some recent like rebranding or realigning of stuff. And we're going to have them and kind of engage in some of this, these texts and welcome pages that we're making available to job seekers to make sure we're writing them in a way that resonates with our vision and the needs of the customer. As we get into that, Lisa, we may pull you in a little bit as well, with your thoughts on what you just provided.
Sure, no problem. Happy to help.
Paul, you had your hand up. Go ahead, and then I will start going through the chat.
It was answered.
Oh, perfect. I'm reading a chat. If you're going to include the phone number for the office near them, is it possible to include the email address or any other information? Yes, we will include all the contact information we have on the office. Anytime they use our, for now, I'm going to call it like I need local in-person help. We're going to have like this kind of like widget almost that we can embed throughout the tool. So customers at any point, if they want to off ramp from a online support to get in-person support, they easily can do that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was the second part of my question. Yeah, I just, I didn't want to be like, picky or anything. I just didn't know if it was customizable so that you could say, hey, all, all LWIAs and WorkNet centers, submit to us, to you guys, what email address, or is there a website link you want them to request somebody's calendar appointment? Is there any, what do you guys want, you, the local areas, what do you want us to put in that notification? So if somebody based on their zip code gets matched up with, LWIA 5 or 17 or 6, us, what would that LWIA, if that was customizable, then that widget. So it sounds like it could be that we could put, a phone number, like a specific phone number, maybe, or our main number, or designate an email, a specific email address or link or something for them to fill out.
Yeah.
Request or something. So, okay, cool. Thanks.
Awesome. And Roy, I see your comment, and this isn't a one or not, like we can have multiple ways in which we bring this information to light. So we can definitely have all these kinds of flags. So we're identifying where customers are stopping at in the process, and you can engage them in various ways. Some might be to move them forward into the application, others might be to get them through eligibility certification. I love that. I don't really see any other options though, like in the chat, I'm not seeing anybody saying, here's some other things we might want to see. Do you guys have any of that before we wrap up this agenda item and move on to the next one? I want to give folks a space to provide feedback or ideas, whether you come off of mute or type in the chat, on ways you think we can facilitate moving customers who are in more of the online world of engaging the application to get them into the office to continue to move forward through eligibility certification, assessments, career planning, and receiving services with you all.
Do you mean, Olivia, like from the standpoint of other questions you could put on the questionnaires that the customers are filling out? Like what other information that the customer could provide that would help and I could be way off here, but that would help the local areas identify in terms of like kind of like triaging or like prioritizing the job seekers or customers, as as far as whom to to contact. I didn't know if I don't think that's what you're asking, but I wasn't sure. Or are you saying as far as when the customer does fill that information out, what types of again, kind of going back to the what types of alerts or listing or notification of these customer screening, these customers submissions the status, you know, where they're at, like what types of alerts of the status would be more helpful to us, because the things you have are helpful. I mean, I would have to kind of let that marinate and maybe ask, you know, a couple of the career planners that couldn't be on the call today from my office, sorry, but ask them, you know, for their input. They would be probably better equipped to, you know, answer that than I would. But just to get an idea of some of the things that would help you, help us.
Yeah, I think both of the things you said. So if you want to connect with your team to talk more about the second of like what kind of information would you guys want to see, definitely do that. You guys can always email me if you think of something after the fact. But if there is other data you feel like if we can know this, it will also streamline our process. I want to know that as well to see if that's something that we're already capturing that we can bring more visibility to, or we need to maybe consider capturing to help you guys better triage and serve these customers as they come into your doors.
I may have a question. I don't just wanted to see, say, if we have something after the fact, after we see how the system is flowing, how people are responding as far as the customers, the client, what they putting out there. I have these talking, we could have 50 million stuff to do update. Again, we don't want to overdo it with having so much information that the client just get to a point where it's so much work for them.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what is the process time, if you put this out there, how long would they stay on it? Because once they get past a certain time limit and it is exceeding and it's over and you're asking this, they're just going to blow it off. They're going to get tired. So my question is more of, once the IWDS 2.0 is working, staff is using it, we all is using it, how easy it will be to implement update to the system, because before IWDS was a pain to update. I think I might have asked this question before. Would this new system be more easier to accommodate and update on the go when needed?
Yes, we will have a more streamlined process and a larger maintenance team to handle that, especially initial go live. After that, we're gonna still be doing maintenance on the tool to build upgrades. So after we go live and start identifying those teams, we'll have folks readily available and continuing to work in IWDS from both a BA and development standpoint. And even after that, we'll always have development and BA staff supporting the IWDS 2.0 platform to be able to adjust as we learn more and become more engaged with using the system. So we can always add additional reports or dashboards or data points that we might need more visibility on to be aware of customers coming in and able to move them forward. We will have a prioritization scale and work with the state team to determine like priority and when things fit into place, but we will always have folks working to make those upgrades as they're identified.
Great, thank you for that.
So we'll go ahead and I got what I needed here. So we can kind of start looking at moving down that road and how we'll use our little widget of getting local help and getting in the queue for eligibility certification. And then this will also go into UAT. At some point, we have just started a lot of work on pre-screening, still have all the application work to build out. But when it does go into UAT, this will be another space where you guys can provide feedback ahead of implementation. So once you actually start getting your hands on it and running a couple of like test cases through it, you might also identify other reports or dashboards or data points you think would be helpful. And that's another space where we can work on expanding that even before implementation if things come up then. If you think of something, tomorrow, later in the week, 2 weeks from now, that might help this, you guys, as always, can email me that information, and we can incorporate it into the discovery and design work that we do before it goes into development. And then when we have a better idea of how this page will look, we'll go over that with you guys as well. I'm gonna go ahead and shift us then to our next item that I wanted to talk with you about today, which is the career plan. We want to talk a little bit about goals and objectives. And we're going to get this in UAT here soon. We have a developer working on this sprint to hook up a few remaining things. So we have currently our table here of our goals and then the objectives that fall under these goals. These were manually added. When we first get this into UAT, it's going to be more of our manually adding goals and objectives. But we are working to build out recommended goals, objectives, and services. I'm working with Taylor from our team on that as we work through the state to kind of identify when they answer various application and assessment questions. We want to have like a recommendations page where the system can recommend goals and services and goals, objectives, and services based on how they answered specific questions to help streamline the process of creating a career plan. But whenever we manually add a goal or objective, one of the first things we do is we pick the type. We have these bucketed into 5 types: employment, education, training, support service, follow-up. And then we also have this other goal not listed option. So if you have a goal and it doesn't fit in any of these, you can always pick other. That is true as we get into goals and objectives. Also, we provide lists on those. You'll always have the option to pick other and manually add your own goal or objective. These preset lists were built to kind of help flag various goals in those types that are going to be used by our customers. So we have, for our employment, we have a list here of get long-term job and new industry. And then we have this bracketed thing, career clusters, that I haven't worked in before. We have, all these that we can pick from. Whenever you pick one that has like a bracketed term, what we're currently working on this sprint is we're going to have a new data point pull up here where we can pick the career cluster that the customer has identified they're working toward to auto populate here. So it would override the bracketed information with whatever career cluster they picked. So that's what we're getting hooked up this sprint, is tying that all together and building that ONET parent code search. We're not going to call it that. We're more focused on career cluster. We don't want to get into a bunch of jargon. But for those of you who are familiar with it, that's what we're doing, is we're picking the 2-digit ONET, the career cluster code, and associating it with the goal. And then that will replace this describe goal. Right now that is here because it is identified as an additional data point item. We just need to break those additional data points out, so you won't see that. And then we select the term. So we have short, intermediate, and long. And then we have the status of term. We have the status of not started, in progress, complete, and discontinued. Discontinued, when we pick it, then we have to pick it was either not achieved or it's no longer applicable. So we can identify the reason we're discontinuing. And then what we want to talk to you guys about today is we then have a planned start date, a planned end date, and then as you move these through different statuses, they also have actual dates. So when it's complete, then the end date shows. We are wanting to know that if you think it is even necessary to have any dates around goals, and then we do the same thing for objectives. And we are wondering if it is even necessary to have it there as well, or if simply having the goal and the term and the status would suffice. And then we'll have dates around services. We'll always keep the dates with the services for planned and actual, but are they necessary for goals and objectives from your guys' perspective? Cassie, and then I'll go to Lisa.
Oh God, I had so many questions, but I couldn't put it in the chat because it would have took too long. Okay, so could you go back to where you had the goals, the list of goals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so no, no, I may be back further because I
This,
saw, yeah, the supportive services. Should that be considered a goal or an objective to meet the goal?
so we have support service broken out as its own goal of take away obstacles to getting job and helping people join work and training programs.
Okay,
And then under that, they might have various objectives that they're looking for. And we have these mapped out. So if you're looking for one that is an objective related to childcare, you can pick that bucket and it shortens the list. Or you
okay,
can look at all. And we mapped these, we mapped all of these, sorry, my mouse is going crazy. We mapped these so that they match the like policy requirements of the types of support services that can be provided.
okay. And then the second question is because when I went over to Career Connect, it was a lot of IEPs and ISSs didn't transfer over. So the everyone was forced to recreate IEPs and ISSs again. And that's a question for me. And then will these be still called individual employment plans or individual service strategies, or will it change with IWDS 2.0?
I answered the last question and then the first question.
Okay.
We're looking at, we're gonna call them a universal career plan. We'll have to change policy on that. The system will know on the back end if it is a youth or an adult, like which one it would be. And it will facilitate the allowing of opening certain things like the ability to start the career plan before a certified application, in the necessary instances for like youth and stuff. We will always have the parameter set, like you can't actually start a service until all the boxes have been checked. But we are looking at moving away from the IEP ISS to Universal Career Plan, but do have to make sure we can do that via like the policy allows us to do that.
Okay. And
The
then the second question, yeah.
yeah, the second question is we have not yet had the conversation around the migration of data.
Okay.
I know the way the state is going is we're wanting to minimize any repetitive work. So if we have customers in place and they already have paper IEPs, ISS, and they are close to being exited or they're in the process of exit, I don't think that we would have you recreate an entire digital universal career plan for those customers. We'll have to define, like, if they're new customers, obviously, yes, they're gonna, as you move them in, they're gonna need this versus a paper one. And then define, like, if, they are, how much engagement we might want them to actually have a digital one. Have you like translate that paper copy over into a digital universal career plan. We have not discussed that for me to tell you exactly what that
Okay.
would look like, but I
Okay.
do know they're very mindful of not creating unnecessary duplicative work for you guys as it relates to the customers who are going to kind of be in limbo going from the old way of doing things to the new.
And then my last question is with the planned start date and end date right now in Career Connect, when you are creating objectives, it's like when you put in a date, then it auto populates maybe 30 to 45 days ahead. And you guys on the call can correct me, but um, how is that gonna go? So do you have to manually put those days in to see how long the objective is going to be before it's time to review, or does it, when you put in a date, do it automatically populate a planned end date? And then of course you have to review the date.
We right now have it in like you would manually add that kind of data in.
Okay.
The reviews, and I do want to mention, you made me think of something. We are logging the create and updated dates.
Okay.
So we, even if we don't have the plan start and the plan end dates, we know when the goals and objectives were created and we know when they were updated. And we can use these dates to set those various time frames. And I know there's a policy that every X number of days, you have to review the career plan. If we can log that you guys have been in making updates to the career plan, that time parameter will always reset and not force you guys to go in and do that review until we've seen you haven't touched a career plan for that defined period of time. So we can do a lot of that and bring awareness to goals and objectives using the created and updated dates to
Okay.
say like, you know, if we see a goal or objective was created or last updated a year ago, we can provide dashboard rows and like reports on like these goals and objectives might need to be reviewed because a year has passed since you have last touched them. And we can set those differently for like, you know, employment goals we might be okay with every year and a half, where training goals we might be more concerned like in a year if nothing's changed with them. If we haven't seen like their status move, you know, from in progress to or not started in progress to complete, because every time you move the status, you're updating and we're logging that.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's it.
Perfect. Lisa?
So I want to answer your question prior to what Cassie was asking, but then what Cassie said kind of sparked something else. So I want to touch base on that whole support service goal piece. Is that 100% set in stone that it has to be a goal? The reason why I'm asking that is because you're talking about, your question originally was, should we have dates or should we not have dates? And then I heard you mention something along the lines of wanting to make it streamlined and easier for the career planner to be able to handle these plans. By having multiple goals and then objectives to achieve that goal, it sometimes can be more time consuming that way. Whereas what Cassie said is, you know, right on point, that a support service really is helping them to achieve whatever their actual goal is, whether it's, you know, employment in X or training in Y type of thing. And that helping to carry that out. So my question is, does it always have to be that way where the support service is a goal as opposed to being objective? I vote for the objective piece only because it is helping to carry out what the reality is, and it's the employment in whatever, you know, industry or you know, occupation that the individual wants to enter into. It helps for those individuals to be able to, you know, get rid of some of those barriers to get that particular you know, job or what have you. So that was sparked because of Cassie's question. I was just curious if there's any wiggle room on removing that as a goal. It just seems like it's just added work where a customer then, or a career coach then has to add a goal and then objectives to it, as opposed to it being objectives to the original goal of employment or training.
I can definitely bring that back to the state if you guys from the local perspective are feeling like you would the potential to seeing that support services being under
that
the
really isn't a
various
goal of the
employment training and
program.
education goals.
Right. It's really not a goal of the program. It's really a goal. I mean, it's really an objective to achieve the goal of employment, or it helps to support their training goal. it's really not a goal in and of itself. So that's my request. And it was kind of right. The main goal is employment.
Okay.
Training actually is an objective to the employment as well, but I wasn't going there right now. I was only kind of fighting for the support service to kind of become an objective and no longer a goal. But that was that piece. And then the second piece was the question that you asked about the whole dates. I like being able to put in the dates, but the whole planned and then the actual, just in my experience in Career Connect and with my staff's experience, I think the actual is more important than the planned. And having to go back in and update things just because a planned start date is in a couple days versus it's starting right now. I just kind of feel like it might lend to being more time.
Yeah.
Way more time consuming for the staff to have to then constantly update that. I agree there should be some type of dates in there because they do need to be reviewing because it is a live document and, and it's supposed to be an ever evolving piece. But I don't know necessarily if they have to do it with the planned and then the actual.
Do you think, and I see the chat too, I'm monitoring that as well. Somebody said like we should have like general idea of, so we have term, and this can help us as well. We can say like short-term goals, if we're not seeing that they're being updated, we're not seeing the status moving, because like I said, we have these like if we're not seeing that they're being updated, like a short-term goal, I can't remember the time periods off the top of my head, but we set those. If we're not seeing that the goal or their subset objectives are being updated in that time period, then we can elevate it. And then, do the same for because we have the term, intermediate, and long too.
I think that might be nebulous though to the career coach. If they see the actual dates, then I think that would be easier for them to see it. But I do agree with the whole short term, intermediate, and long term though, because maybe if they select short term and then they put an actual start date and an end date that's a year out, it would flag it and say, no, that's not short term. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I do like that term piece. And, and what happens if it was identified as short-term originally, but then it ends up needing to be updated because the individual, maybe something happened and they couldn't do it in a short term or something like that. I'm just thinking about how easy it is for the staff person to manage this piece and how much it's going to be, like how many dings are they? I'm looking at from like a perspective of a monitoring, like someone going to get dinged if the actual end date is longer than the term for short term. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah, and I talked to the monitoring folks about it, and they were more concerned. They do find issues with the planned dates and actual dates being incorrect with what's actually happening with services. That was their biggest concern. But if we get rid of those, and I see a question, we will still have planned and actual dates on services, and services will be tied to objectives, which are tied to goals. We will not be getting rid of dates on a service level, just in case anybody was wondering. I saw a couple of comments about something similar to that. We're looking at only removing them from, or not even all of them. We could just remove planned from goals and objectives.
I think, I mean, just from my perspective, I think the objectives should have the dates, and the goal should just be a term.
Okay, so we could set remove dates here, and then just keep from an objective, remove planned, but just have the actual dates the objectives will happen, and then we'll have the dates on the services that fall under that as well.
But
Is
sure,
one
yeah.
thing I'm hearing.
And you brought up that you spoke with the monitors. Every local area and every person within that local area that is a monitor does things sometimes differently. So if there could be a regular playbook on this, because one monitor might say, no, that doesn't work. But the other monitor might say, no, that does work because we're following what the state is. You know what I'm saying? So if there can be a playbook on that, that would be very helpful for staff as a understanding on these dates and how we're supposed to be updating it accordingly.
Yeah, because your objectives start and end dates should align with your services. The day you start the first service that's tied to this objective should be the date you start it. And the date you end the last objective tied to, or last service tied to this objective should be the end date. That you're working on this objective.
Right, but I've seen it though, that there's an objective, but there might not necessarily be a service because the service wasn't, like, it might be a customer is doing that on their own, and therefore there is no real service. And we've been dinged on that. We've also been dinged on length of time, where it's, no, you can't have it that long. But that's what the customer did. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So a service doesn't always have to go in for an objective. That it's just that this is what the plan is for that particular customer. Like, let's say they're researching training, they might not be needing needing help with that. Maybe and that was one of their objectives, but we don't have a service in there. I'm just using that as an example. I mean, there's so many other types of examples, but there isn't a service in. And then I have, well, your objectives don't match your services. Well, no, in my, what services you are offering should be added into the objectives, but the objectives don't necessarily have to lend to services, because customers can do a lot of things on their own, and it might not necessarily be a service. If I'm saying that right.
I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah.
The service has to fall within the objective start and end date, but there might be other things happening in that time frame where you might have no service, but it open because they're doing something on their own.
Correct.
Omar, I see you have your hand up, and then I'll go back through the chat again to make sure I'm following.
Yeah, I just had a comment about the goal and objectives. I think ultimately the main goal of the program is employment, and the objectives are the means for us to reach that goal. So the objective itself could be a sub goal, if you want to say. It could consist of support services, trainings, improvement of math scores, a variety of objectives that can be embedded into the plan. The other part is concerning the dates. I agree with Lisa. So it's not too confusing to whoever is going into as a career coach to go in and keep switching those dates around. If we have a planned date, a start date, and a review date, and an actual end date. So, and the one thing that would be nice is to have the review date triggered by the system to inform the career coach, though, oh, your review date's up. What's happening with this customer? What's happening with this objective? So I mean, just to make the system help us keep track of things.
Can you guys talk to me? That I did want to ask that. I keep seeing that in the chat, and you guys have mentioned a review date. So what I know of a review date is like the policy set review date of every X number of days you have to like review the career plan. And we're gonna have that established to trigger a review. And you guys have to, if you have not touched the career plan within X number of days, we're going to trigger it to enter a status of needs review. And you guys have to like click a box that says you review it to take it out of that status. Are there other reviews you guys are doing that you would like to set manually, or is that something the system can set based on that policy defined time period?
Well, I think when it comes to objectives, it depends on what the objective is and the duration of it and when the start and end date is. So the review date can be different for each objective.
Okay.
Because let's say you're in a training and it's a 6 months training, so the review date should be close to the end of the 6 month. But that does not mean that there's not that monthly contact that is required through the case notes of 30 days to be in contact with the customer. It's just to review the actual uh, uh, result of the objective.
Okay. So not a review date on the entire career plan, but individual review dates on each of the objective items themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
And ultimately, the goal for that plan would be the employment goal, which has to happen at the after the last date of completion of the last objective.
Say that one more time.
So the goal end
Uh-huh.
date or the date for completing the goal would have to be on or after the last end date of an objective.
Yes. Yeah, we do have a little bit of that embedded in here now. Of those time, like, because if we remove all dates from goals, we'll kind of lose some of that. But we do have the objectives are essentially subsets of a goal. So you
Mhm.
can't have a goal closed but still be working on an objective. Like you're saying, those
Yeah.
time periods are bound within that of a goal.
Mhm.
But if we remove the dates, which I want to talk a little bit more about this, and then I'm gonna ask the final question to have you guys like start giving me some answers on what you want to do. But I want to kind of talk about it and have an understanding of some possible options here.
Okay.
So I have your thing flagged, Omar, of like a review date on objectives that would be manually set.
Mhm. And I have just one question.
Yeah.
When it comes to the plan, the short term, long term, what is exactly the definition of that?
We are in the process of uh making a more intuitive info bubble feature. This used to say it does it now, but we have in the here like the definitions of what each of those terms are. I don't know if it'll tell me if I click that. No. This it was like I can't remember, like 1 to 3 months, 4 to 12 months, over 12 months, I think. I'm guessing, but that's we had talked about this a while back, and you guys said you wanted this more defined. So the state is going to define this more and then update policy to have these terms defined on how long they typically would be.
To achieve the goal, correct?
The goal. Yep.
Okay, because I think that's a little bit tied to whatever the objectives might be, and having one of them being going into training. So that kind of locks you in terms of a long or short term, because there could be long trainings or short trainings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to define before you actually go and do the explorations for training and see how long it's going to take for them to complete the training.
Yep,
But
and it can be defined as, intermediate and based on initial conversation, and then they pick a training and now it moves to long. You guys can easily change that term and it'll log it behind the scenes that it was changed, so that it's clear that, one of the things we flagged for training for the career plan is that the career plan is a living thing, and we do expect to see a lot of these changes as situations change with the customer. So as we think about like services too, you might plan to do a service within a specific time period, but something happens. We would want to see those planned dates on the service change now that the plan has changed. And those will all be logged behind the scenes, so we're not losing anything of what maybe the original intent was and now what it is now. And then can use case notes to explain when situations change, thus we've made changes to the plan.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sense of what is the benefit of defining the term of the goal.
The term of the goal will help give the customer an idea and the career planner an idea of how long we want to be working in this versus it just being an open goal that we don't like. The customer is really wanting to achieve this in a short period of time, or not even wanting, like it is possible to and wants to, versus the customer might have other things going on in their life, and this is going to need to be a longer term goal where it might be a short term goal for somebody else who can give like 100% of their focus. So it's just helping to further define and put time parameters around those goals to make them more actionable.
Okay.
Crystal, you have your hand up?
Right. Okay. I feel like I am either missing something, or I sort of feel like we're making things more complicated than they need to be. And the reason why I say that is because every career planner, you were talking about, there's a couple things kind of all together here. You were talking about the possibility of switching the name IDP-ISS to be more of a universal career plan, which I think is great. Okay. The policy, needing to be changed to go along with that. And everybody knows that we're supposed to be doing 90-day reviews.
Right.
So your overall universal career plan, let's just call it that, which is what all of these employment, all of the goals and objectives and all that is tied to. You're talking to a whole person, an entire human being as a customer. So everything that you have under goals and objectives and whatever, every time you meet with that person, like in our area, for example, every time they come in to do a monthly contact, we ask them if anything has changed. Does this look good? Is this all what you're technically reviewing the whole thing every time?
Mm-hmm.
So putting plan dates, start dates, end dates, blah, blah, all over what essentially is an IEP-ISS that is now laid out in the system as goals and objectives just feels like it's super cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
When you could just say, hey, this whole thing, you need to talk to this entire person, be customer centric, look at them at least every 90 days. And your goals and objectives, they may be changing all over the place. I don't want staff people freaking out over having to mess with dates all the time, and they're going in there and you know what I mean? It's great to have drop down boxes. It's great to have things streamlined as much as possible, but we can also do too much as well. And in an effort to try to make things better, we're making it more cumbersome. So if we're talking about really moving to a customer-centric way of doing things, yes, should they be able to see their goals and know whether they're short, intermediate, or long-term? Absolutely. That's awesome. Should we call it a universal career plan? Absolutely. Because to a person, an IEP-ISS makes no sense whatsoever. It's ridiculous. I just feel like there's like a trigger for a review at least every 90 days for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to a whole person. So I'm just trying to wrap my brain around all of the like little nitpicky stuff about the planning and the actual and the ending, and I just like, it makes no sense to me because we're trying to move to a customer focused, treating him as a whole person all the time. So that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just to piggyback on that, it's but I mean, I understand, Olivia, you guys, the challenge that you have. But yeah, it is probably hard to find like that happy medium of how the current system, was designed before universal career plans and individual employment plans became more of a thing that like was missing in the way we case managed we clients, and then when we moved into WeOS. So it's making up for the lack of having something universal that could be helpful. But it's kind of funny. There's that's kind of the paradox. There's too a universal, not in terms of for all of us to use. I think it's a great initiative, and we do appreciate all the stuff you guys are doing to try to make it, and that it is probably it's going to be a challenge, I'm sure, to find that happy medium. But universal, kind of like what Chris was saying, like some participants are not going to need nearly as much intensive kind of case management or and I don't mean to say, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say hand holding, but I don't mean that obviously in a pejorative sense, like
Right.
demeaning to people. But some are going to need more than others. So it in that sense, it's nice to have all these options because for some participants, we're going to have we may need to be recording like hey, they didn't follow through this, or we're helping them, or we're going to connect them with a resource center or something if they're a challenge with reliable transportation or homelessness, things like that. So there could be. So yeah, it's kind of hard because like universal in terms of clients. Well, no participants or clients are universal. But I'm sorry, I wasn't really going anywhere with that. Just kind of seeing both sides, and just kind of weighing in.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too that occurred to me while you're talking about the data migration and whether or not people are going to have to recreate stuff and whatever. Currently in IWDS, if you wanted to think about it this way, the assessment summary is functioning as some of this stuff that we're talking about that would be in the career plan. So if there was a way to trigger something or whatever during data migration, that anybody who was migrated over as an old client who had a completed assessment summary in IWDS would then either auto-populate into the new stuff or just be marked a one-time thing that was done. Like that seems to me like that would be the simplest way to make sure that happened without everybody having to recreate, hundreds or thousands of people's stuff. It was just a thought that occurred to me while you were talking about that.
But what about Career Connect? Because I don't think that stuff transfers over.
Yeah, that I don't know anything about.
Career Connect, you guys kind of already have a career plan
in
place. So we could migrate yours using the other option and just essentially recreate that career plan. I like I said, I still have to look into the migration part of all of this, but we could essentially rebuild those goals, objectives as others. And then do your services tie to the goals and objectives, or are those, I can't remember off the top of my head from looking at that, are those disconnected or do they connect?
In Career Connect?
Yeah.
We can add services in, and it doesn't necessarily, I don't know necessarily if it's tied, but when you do create the actual IEP and stuff, there is services that are connected there. Okay. I don't know, Cassie or somebody else from the partnership.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Okay, so for this ELWIA location, for this ELWIA area, when OAS is created, that means it's a service connected to that. When the ISS is created, that means it's a service connected to that. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just heard someone stated that if you have a completed I want to say the OAS, because we was referring to something in IWDS, the assessment summary, and that just prompted me to hurry up to sign into IWDS to see what you were talking about. But I guess the concern is because I remember when IWDS went over to Career Connect and there was a lot of panic because a lot of things didn't migrate over. So everything had to be manually inputted. So when I heard you say if you have a completed OAS, if that's what you're referring to, we just want to make sure that these things are transferring over. But to answer your question, to Lisa's point, yes, it is a service connected to the ISS or IEP, depending on the program. And yes, it's an OAS connected to the service as well.
But not the services moving forward. Those are not
Right,
connected with it.
right. Yes, that part. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll get into that migration and we'll make sure we're migrating it in a way that we minimize the amount of effort you guys have to like recreate something digitally, and try to have the system automate doing as much of that as possible and find that appropriate cutoff for when that happens.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I did note the assessment summary and the OAS is some place we could kind of look at seeing a potential break for if they have those completed, if we can use that and tie that, versus maybe if they're not to that point in the process, then we do have them create a universal career plan in the system. So I have that noted for when I start that conversation with the state, and we'll look there.
Okay. Thank you.
Crystal, what you are saying is spot on, and that's the direction we're wanting to take the universal career plan. Is we want this to be customer centered. We want to make sure the customer is aware of their goal and the term, and then we know at our local level, like where are we at? We're in progress. We're working on this. And we do have the back end set up for those 90-day reviews. So if we can see during your conversation with a customer on those 30 days, you should be talking about that career plan. Has anything changed? If things have, you should be, making updates to those services plan dates, making updates to your objectives to show that they've, they're started or they've ended or whatever that is. And when you're engaging and updating that career plan, we see that you're doing those reviews and we're extending that 90 days. And so when you go 90 days without touching that career plan at all, then we're prompting you to say, hey, you need, like, this has to be reviewed. So we're trying to streamline that review process as well as an entire career plan review. So having the plan and actual dates on goals, on objectives, and on services, we 100% agree that's probably way too much. We know we need that from a service level, but would like to roll that back from goals and objectives for maintenance for a customer as well as a career planner trying to maintain all of their customers' career plans. So I do want to echo what you were saying, Crystal, about making this customer centered and making it manageable for our career planners is where we're really wanting to take this. We just don't want to take away plans and actual dates from goals and objectives if that is something that you guys need in order to do your work. We were meeting with the monitoring team, making sure we're not taking away things that they need to do their work. And I hear what you're saying, Lisa, about how do we account for things happening that's not a service and how those actual dates might be able to help facilitate that. I do want to talk to the state and monitor team about that, about possible options of like, is there a way that we can add like activities in addition to services so that you can flag that to show that work is like happening and get credit for it and it's not getting like lost in case notes. But there's other activities the customer's doing. They have the self and information only services. So I'm sure a lot of that work could be captured by adding those, but there might be things outside of those self and information only services that they're doing that is supporting that objective. You need a way to capture as well. And then Omar, I hear what you're saying about a review date at more of just like an objective level. And while what Crystal's saying is we should be like reviewing this career plan as like one whole thing there might be dates there where you're really wanting to make sure that you come back and review this. And when you have a large caseload, trying to remember all that is a lot. So we can also explore potentially adding like an optional review date, not having it something that's forced on every objective, but something that career planners might be able to use to help manage their workloads for various objectives they know they want to circle back to. So there's a lot of ways that we could approach this, but I want to, before we end for today, I would like to know from you guys in the chat, so we have kind of a log, because I don't have a poll question for this, is from goals and objectives, are we comfortable with removing plan dates and actual dates? And you guys can put in the chat like what you would want removed or what you would want to stay. I can interpret the data easily enough to come up with final numbers. And then if there's any additional data fields that you would like included or feel like need to be included to facilitate your work with the career plan, I want to know that as well. Because we need to get a consensus. We can't remove a field if only one person wants it removed. We can't add a field if only one person wants it added. We need to have an understanding from the full local area group before we can kind of start exploring potential options. So if you guys can go ahead and start typing in the chat how you feel about either removing or keeping planned and actual dates for goals and objectives, that would be fantastic.
But to go along with that, Olivia, I didn't hear anything anywhere where it said when you review this, like, is there a button at the end or something that tells you that you've reviewed it and you're good to go? I haven't seen anything like that. Like, it just says to save the goal, but like if you go in and let's say you're going into you're reviewing your universal career plan, the whole thing, and you're looking at it and there's nothing changing, there's no difference in dates or whatever, is there going to be a button somewhere on there that says we've reviewed it and it's good, or are you just saving it every time? Like, what is the function for that?
So we're going to have services embedded in there too. So anytime you change goals objective, our services will trigger that. And then Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since we talked about case notes, but if you're not changing a career plan, you reviewed it, nothing's changing. We still have to like add a case note to flag that 30-day communication. And I believe we were going to put in there a way for them to flag as part of that contact, they completed a review of the case note. So you're kind of doing it all in one place. You have to talk to the customer, you have to document that. And as part of doing that, you're either changing the career plan, which will flag you've reviewed, or you're checking a box that flagged you reviewed because no changes were made. And then we don't have it brought all the way to the front yet, but we trigger when modifications happen and a signature is required. We're also going to have when you surpass that 90 days, a flag, and then you have to come to this page and there's going to be a text with a checkbox that says that like I certify that I've reviewed this, and then click it and digitally sign, like just check a box that you did it, and it will reset that 90 days if you never changed it. And on all of your 30-day touch base case notes, you never check the box that as part of that you reviewed the career plan and you did that consecutively for 90 days, then you would have a space here where you have to sign that you're actually doing it. Does that answer your question, Crystal?
I think so.
Okay, and we can look more into that if we need to have a way, not only like on case notes where we're checking a box that we've reviewed it, but here we have a box. I have to like reset dates on career plans to make that pop up here, because it is right now it's set at every 90 days and then it shows up. And I test these very often, so I never really hit that 90 days. But we can move that various places to flag like these career, like these are the customers' career plans that need reviewed, so you can easily get a count. And then when you go to those customers, we can have it here as well as a space for them to say that they have reviewed it.
There was some talk about like policy with like required reviews, 90 days, 6 months, things like that. So, and I admittedly, I hate to say, I mean, maybe I'm not it's up to date, or I'd have to go back and look, but I just didn't know as far as like plan dates, start dates, end dates for and goals and objectives and a universal career plan. I guess I could go either way, whatever's more or less cumbersome for the people that are going to have to use this, the types of career planners, roles that would have to use this, day to day. I just didn't know how much of it was like kind of policy driven as far as, and where they were talking about like, there were some that have talked about monitors, asking about, maybe perhaps whatever in-house types of IEPs, ISSs that some of us are using. So I just didn't know, like, is it as far as if that might help the decision of whether or not we, quote unquote, need or should have the planned end date fields. I just didn't know if that had to do with certain monitors or DOL or, like, again, like a policy thing of where they want to see more like on top of it kind of case management. But then as Crystal and Allison alluded to, earlier, or not Allison, I'm sorry, Crystal alluded to earlier, is sometimes it overkill or too much to, could you be too on top of it, with, your career plan, screens and maintenance, or is one of the issues as far as benefits or drawbacks of keeping or removing the plan dates, is it also kind of in reference to like the screen you have up now, Olivia, where it's like, it would be just it'd be harder, and just because I could totally relate if it means like it's going to be too, just more cumbersome as far as filtering and reviewing and listing and then filtering and sorting the notes and screens and tasks to say, like, wait, when did they do this? When, because I could, like I said, there's valid, there's kind of valid arguments for each way.
It's not too cumbersome for us from a system perspective to do any of the ways you guys need. We just need to know.
Well, I meant like from the users, like, is that why?
Oh,
because
yes.
It's like a bit more, because I totally could relate to that too. It's like, oh man, more fields that we'd have to, you're putting in all these dates, and you can start to get confused too. It's like, wait, when you're reading the screen, I'm sorry, that's what I meant when I said cumbersome, not so much from a design standpoint.
One of the things that monitors told us is they get a lot of their findings here because planned dates are initially put in, but they're not maintained. And so you plan to do it during this time period, the plan changes and you don't update it to show the new current planned dates. And so that is where most of their findings come from. And so they thought not having these plan dates would help minimize folks having to continue to maintain that, because you're maintaining it on goals, you're maintaining it on objectives, and you're maintaining it on services. So when the plan changes, you're not just going in and changing the plan dates for when you'll provide those services. You have to do them to other places as well. And that often gets overlooked and results in findings because you haven't updated it in a million places. So if you guys need plan dates on goals, because simply knowing when you plan to provide them services isn't enough, we want to make sure that we're keeping that. But I think I want to have a more focused way of gathering this information from you guys. I think we had a lot of conversation and I know more now to better facilitate how to better understand this. So I want to work, I'm going to save all the information I got from the chat. I think this is very helpful and will help me put together a more focused survey I can provide to you all on collecting this information. I know it's really hard to kind of understand what we're talking about when we only have part of the screens. You are only seeing goals and objectives. We don't have the service part baked in yet, but then under objectives, we'd have our services, and they would also have additional data points that you have to fill in with their own planned and actual dates that have to be filled in. So that's kind of where we were at when we started actually like seeing this. We're like, is it really necessary to have all of these plans that as you're talking to a career plan or a customer on their whole career plan and something changes, you need to say, oh, wait, hold on. Like, I need to refigure out all this stuff, not just necessarily at a service level, but how does that impact the objective and how does that impact the goal? or simply knowing it at the service level would be enough. So I'm going to take all this. I would like to create a survey over the next couple of days with Kelly Trimble to better identify more at each of the goal, what is needed and the why it is needed. Then we'll do the same thing for objective, which of these are needed and why. And then we'll note that, just for reference, that we will be collecting this kind of data at a service level, which a service will be tied to an objective, and give you guys context around other data we're gathering. I see here like an objective creation date. We're auto setting that when you create it. So a lot of these dates too, and we want to make sure we're leveraging that. Like, where are we auto logging and create, like putting timestamps that we can leverage, so our career planners are having to do less work on these dates. And then looking at any additional data points that need added, such as like a review date on the potential to maybe make that optional, so only the folks who need it can use it. And we're not forcing another data point in there. So I'll work on that survey and we'll get that sent out to you guys using the responses you just put in the chat for what you would like to see will help me better structure that. I really appreciate your guys' time today. Not sure what we will have on the agenda for next week, but I'm sure we will have something, and we'll be getting that out to you guys as soon as we get next week sorted out based on where we're at with discovery. I might spend some time actually re-talking through this after I get survey responses back, or using a little bit of that time for folks who haven't completed the survey to go ahead and do that, so we can kind of put a pin in this so that I can take it back to the state and then get it back in development, because we would love to get these goals and objectives in a workable place where you guys can start getting your hands on it, so we can kind of start identifying what else might need to be adapted to make it work as best as possible in the field in real life. So with that, we'll close up. Thanks for staying on a little bit late and for all of your time and thought in today's session.
Well, thank you. It was a great presentation, a great conversation about everything that we need done. So thank you guys, and everyone have a great rest of the day and weekend.
Thanks, Robert. You too.
All
Take
right.
care, everyone.
All
Bye,
right.
all.